Welcome to the Here's Waldo podcast, where we sit down with top visionaries and creatives in the video game industry. Together, we'll unravel their journeys and learn more about the path they're forging ahead. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Mintis, founder and CEO of the Here's Waldo Recruiting. We are a boutique video game and tech recruitment firm, and this is the Here's Waldo podcast. In every episode, we dive deep into conversations with creatives, founders, and executives about their journey. You can expect to hear valuable lessons and get a glimpse into the future of the industry. This episode is brought to you by Here's Waldo Recruiting. We are a boutique recruiting firm for games and tech that provides quality over quantity, transparency, communication, and diversity. Before bringing on today's guest, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Dice for making this introduction possible. If you don't go to Dice, you should. Today we have Peter Nagy with us. Peter is the co-founder of the oldest Slovakian development studio, Game Farm, which was established in 2001 and is still growing and developing better and better games. He is also the founder of the first and still only Slovakian publishing company called Grindstone. He does many things. So he is also the founder of an international conference for game developers, Game Dev Košice. Say it again.
Košice.
Košice. Okay. Almost nailed it. For 8 years. He is also the founder of a nonprofit regional initiative, Game Dev Košice, co-founder of Slovakian Game Developers Association. Would love to hear more on that. He has an MD and he is a software engineer. He speaks at events. He does it all. Let's get started. Thank you for being here. I loved hearing your story at Dice and how you're doing all these different things that all funnel together. I would love to start by hearing a bit about the state of the game industry in Slovakia, both when you started the studio and to where it is today.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity. It's really great to be here and speak a little bit more about what we do, why we do it, and maybe a little bit of history, because we wouldn't be here should not be the history play its part. So as you may know, like Slovakia is a very little tiny country in the Central Europe. So we are the small one, I think maybe actually the smallest one here, definitely surrounded by bigger countries like Poland, which is very famous for game dev. And Slovakia was left aside, partially because of its size, like 5 million country, and partially because we have been before Czechoslovakia, and after the split, basically everything stayed in Czech. So Czechia. So basically Slovakia was empty ground. And we started in 2001, maybe, developing. I was like, I don't know, 18, 19 years old, knowing nothing and knowing it all at the same time. So no limits, no boundaries. It was fun. It was really, really great beginning. At the beginning, we were not really planning to do a game development. It was like, okay, we will create just like software company. We will deliver cheap software for West. But and there was also like one of our co-founders was German, and he was supposed to bring the business in. Unfortunately, we were sitting here and he didn't manage to get any business. So we were discussing, okay, what can we do? We have been playing a lot of the games, of course. And then okay, it gets boring after playing Counter-Strike for like 2 months. And then it's like, okay, we should do something and try to change things. So that's why we started doing what we want, what we liked the most, basically. So creating games, and we created the first demo. We sent it out, and get very good feedback. So it was like, wow, let's do it, and that started rolling. And in 2004, we released our first game called Heretic Kingdoms. So like Heretic Kingdoms, the Inquisition in the US. It was isometric ARPG with 2D flat backgrounds. And it wasn't like super successful in terms of commercial success, but it got kind of nice reviews, 70+% in Metacritic. Players love it. It was the first momentum which kind of kicked us in the direction of game development in Slovakia. Back in the days, like the Slovakia was very uncharted territory. There was literally one development company in Bratislava, but was very far, 400 kilometers. We only read about it in the newspapers, something, and internet was just very beginning. So just learning by doing and failing, and that came through the entire development cycle. Now it's obviously has progressed much better because of all the activities and also the internet accessibility and the knowledge and everything is much better now. So it can't be really compared. Before it was just distribution with retail and boxes and everything. So not anymore now.
Okay, that's a great story. So you had multiple co-founders. What made you decide to even start a company in the first place at the age of 18 or 19?
Yeah, well, I like to create in the first place. So that's, I think, the biggest motivation for me to create something. And then, the entrepreneurship, a little bit, obviously, I have to be a little bit entrepreneurship spirit as well, like starting all these activities. It's fun making something and like doing some change, maybe a little, but little by little.
Yeah. Okay, so you have a few people and you decide you want to make a game. How did you decide? Was it just a game that you wanted to play? Did you assess the market and figure out we think the market here? Like, tell me about
market.
Okay, so there's no. It was just making a passion project at first.
Yeah, definitely. Like back in the days, like market research, like why, what, and where should we get the data? Literally, we were in the land of nothing, so we were happy to create something which works. My most favorite games were Baldur's Gate, Fallout, and Diablo. So that was the affection which affected all our games. We always stick to this ARPG kind of genre, even though like in the meantime, we did a lot of different genres to pay the bills and earn the money. But at the same time, we always tried in the background to create some RPGs, mostly this ARPG kind of game. So I suppose we were heavily affected by the games which we played before.
And did you self-publish your game, or how did you go about figuring out how to distribute initially, and then how did that evolve?
We have been working with the publishers. Back in the days, there was not really any other option. Like boxes, obviously, we cannot do distribute. Well, we could, but in theory, but no experience, no setup, no distribution networks, no contacts. So we worked with the publishers for 15 years. And we still work with to an extent, but since 2015, we have had a lot of bad experiences with the publishers. They often went bankrupt when they were supposed to start paying us the royalties. And it's difficult also to control the royalties flows and the reports. It's kind of frustrating many times. We didn't have luck. I'm sure there are great publishers as well. It's just we didn't have luck to meet any. So in 2015, I decided that I would be doing the same things over and over again and failures and like bringing the money for everybody else than ourselves. So that's why I founded Grindstone as a kind of our own publishing. It took me like 7-8 years to learn by failing that it's not so easy, bring the team together. And this year and the next one, we are launching 3 games, our first releases, which are more really published rather than before just creating the game and putting it on the market. Again, I learned my lessons. And the fact that I'm coming from development myself, then it's a different approach. Usually the publishers, they are built up from the top down rather than from the bottom up. I think that's a major difference what we do.
Yeah, you understand the problems because you had the problems and then you make the solution. That's great. So how would you say that from an entrepreneurial lens, what are the differences in creating a studio that makes games versus creating a publisher? What have you learned? Has the approach been pretty similar? You said building the team was hard. Tell me about the differences, besides the obvious ones.
To be honest, I think development is harder. To be honest, we don't have really successful published games, but looking at it from overall perspective, entrepreneurship, especially a publisher can distribute the risks. Usually developers, they are focused on one project. If that one fails, there is a big problem with the developer studio.
Yeah.
And with the development, there is so much work you have to do to make the game done. And like, I mean, literally managing the team, big team usually, like mediums, even like 10, 15, 20 people, it's usually more than the publisher has. You have to combine the different experiences, different proficiencies, and plan it and execute it and be controlled by the publishers, deliver on time. I mean, that's really, really different experience. And publishers, I think from business-wise, it's a safer ground, because what you can do is you can distribute between the multiple opportunities, and you are basically in full control all the time. So you control which games are performing well. You can also even have some data at the moment, so you kind of like can evaluate which one performs the best and focus your effort to the games which have the most potential, which is unlucky for the devs which are not so successful in terms of data performance and such. So from entrepreneurship, I would definitely consider more for publishing, but at the same time, it's less rewarding because it's not so creative. And the only way you can really create something is like making the game yourself.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think about publishing in 2024 and 2025? What does that mean versus what it meant when you started? Like, how are you approaching truly adding value as a publisher?
It's getting very crowded. The publishing is getting very hard, like getting exposure. Market is so saturated with the games, and just getting anything visible. Also, the risks are definitely increasing for releasing any games, which in the end applies also for development. Developers create the games, which have to be put on the market. So the global situation, I don't think it's very favorable for making content, but still I hope and we believe that if the game is good and the development costs are kept within certain level of risks, then it makes a viable proposal for good games. If there is at least like some basic market research done before and whom you are addressing and so on, which sometimes developers don't do that much.
Yes, I had a guy named Joe from Solston on my podcast, which helps you from the very early stages understand what your player base wants, what they say they want, but how they play, what they really want. And so I think there's also a lot more tech coming out in this space. If you want to listen and you want the feedback early, you can get it. So you talked about low development costs, which coming from Slovakia versus I'm in Seattle, many of my listeners are in San Francisco. What that means is probably drastically different. So on the publishing side, are you publishing games from just Slovakia? Are you publishing games from certain regions in Europe or certain regions in the world that are more lower cost? How do you think about finding an appropriate cost center?
At the moment, that's also because of all our activities which we do, like regional positioning of ourselves and such. We have a good position here. We have friends. We are part of the Slovakian Game Developers Association. We are very well connected with the indie scene. We support it, and because of that, for us, the primary pillar is Slovakia at the beginning, but we are already like looking beyond Slovakia borders for the Central Europe, because it's one thing is valid for the entire Central Europe. It's low cost and fairly high quality. So that's our starting position, but we hope that we soon will get to the position that we will be able to look also like further, but it will require more costs, more risks and such. So first we focus on where we are best known and what's the best comparative advantage. So
yeah, that makes sense. And I want to go back to Games Farm. So you're very focused on RPGs. And what do you feel like in this space? What is the secret sauce, or what really makes a great RPG in your experience? And do you have any stories about what decisions you've made that have led to a better rated, more well-received game versus less in this space?
well, it's a tough one because Every game is very specific, and you can easily kill the game by one single decision. So I think I just recently read somewhere that it's making a great game is more about not screwing things up too much rather than making something very unique. And this applies, I think, to a broad extent. The main thing is not do it too originally and not become with too many great ideas and put it together. What you should look for is a traditional formula and bring some innovation aspect to it. So it shouldn't be too much, but because then you may be suddenly misplacing your target audience somewhere where you don't know, where you maybe don't want to, or you just don't have the control. So, for example, now we are working on the Jotun Slayer Hordes of Hell, and it's like a very traditional formula of Vampire Survivors. We just push the production quality to a high level. It's not that much original, to be honest, but at the same time, people love it.
Yeah.
It's just find the balance between being a little bit innovative, but bring something which distinguish you from the rest of the crowd, but still target the same crowd.
Okay. What are you doing? Can you say what you're doing that's going to be so innovative in your upcoming title?
Well, in the first place, it's like production quality, so it's more looking like Diablo for the visuals and like bringing this traditional Vampire Survivors kind of formula in Viking settings. So it's a kind of mixture of this higher production quality and the gameplay of the Vampire Survivors. Okay.
Okay. Anything else to look forward to from your studio? Any announcements or things to keep an eye on either company?
Well, let me focus now. It's our first, to an extent, self-published game from Games Farm. And before we have been always working with the publishers, and we even tried to like 2 years ago we tried to create a new Vikings game and pitched it to different publishers, but the landscape for pitching the games was not very friendly last years, so we didn't manage to find any partner. And that's also like what led us to creating something smaller in terms of scope, production quality, and costs especially. And that's why we created this Jotun Slayer game. So eventually, like all failures may lead to something new and something exciting and some positive things. And what I see in the past, it was always like a failure usually led us to something new. So it was always like going up, down, and then growing up a little bit. So basically learning by failing is a proper word, I would say.
I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from running 80 plus episodes on this podcast. Most people do not create the hit game right away. They iterate and they have all these failures and they have all these up and downs. So thank you for highlighting that. In terms of self-publishing, how are you thinking about discoverability for your game, and how are you thinking? It sounds like you really know this market and you've made games for this audience for a long time, but how do you plan for them to find out about your game? Or do you feel like you have a big enough following in the region already from all that you do that will kind of give you a start?
Definitely not. Like before, it was always linked with the publishers and such, so we didn't manage to build up our own community too much, to be honest, which is our failure. But then it's always difficult when you have publishing partners to build up something for your own. It's not in their interest in the end. They always want you to be part of them. So what we are trying to do is we try to utilize every possible aspect to the publishing. So starting from YouTubers, social media, expo, going to shows like Dice, like for example, where we met, and but also more traditional shows out there. Gamescom and such, like trying to get as much visibility as you can, like being part of every Steam event which you possibly can apply for. Obviously, Steam is one of the main distribution channels at the moment. Working with the first parties, that's one of the keys as well. All our previous games were cross-platform, so we believe that like first-party relations are substantial. And so working with press and trying to convince them that our game is really one of the most appealing games which they can play for now and give us some space. So like doing everything, that's the only way, like putting it all together slowly by slowly, little steps, and like building up the audience.
Yeah, I was inspired by you in general at Dice because you're doing so many different things and you have a lot of energy and you're taking on a bunch of different initiatives. So you started this conference what year?
2017, that was the first year.
Okay. And what were your thoughts? What did you set out to do when you wanted to start this conference in 2017? And
Well,
what did you learn the first year? What went right? What opportunities or failures were there?
was there anything right? To be honest, I don't think so. I mean, the first year was very compelling. Obviously, I was alone, so I was doing guest management, moderating, and planning, and in the end, I was even able to pay the bills for it. So we have had one partner which paid, I don't know, maybe 2,000 euros. Obviously, costs were much higher. So I just wanted to create something to bring the community together and create also the opportunity to show people in the region and present them with the opportunities from the outside, bring our partners, introduce it maybe in a less closed environment. So more like create an open opportunity for everybody to join and get the inspiration and connect with each other. So it was kind of evolution of small meetups, which I organized here on a monthly basis. And then it led to something bigger like game days. And then game days evolved year over year, and more people came in and they see, oh, that's great what you are doing here. So they joined the journey and wanted to improve it. And now it's more about the team rather than myself. So it's all about people. So not really about me. It's just you need to create the initial momentum, and then some people will just start seeing the same things and they will join.
And how big is your conference these days?
Last month it was like 1,200 people attending.
Wow.
And it already has some ripples here in Slovakian landscape. There is like actually substantial art community build up here. So there is even local kind of art space, which is a small space for artists to meet up. It was founded just as a kind of impact of Game Days conference. Some people came back from the outside, from other countries to help other artists. And Game Days now also serves as a kind of meetup for the global artist community from the entire globe. Very famous and talented artists came here, and they bring their fellowships and all the interesting artists from the entire, not only region, but even from the entire globe here. So it's kind of artist meetup, a part of like being a game dev conference. We are also using it as a kind of business development tool. So it's a great opportunity for us to bring partners together, discuss, show them what we are working on, and create more connections between the regional ecosystem and our partners. And then, of course, the new partners are coming. And great thing about this is that anyone, you can find some overlap on the topics. So whomever you meet, you can find, it might be development, it might be publishing, or it might be conference, or Slovakian Game Developers Association. There is very easy to find topics to discuss.
Yeah, that's the best part about games. Congrats on putting that together. I know a lot of companies from the state side are thinking about their development costs as they have been only seems like exponentially getting higher. And there's a lot of interest in expanding into more affordable regions that maybe strategically align from a culture standpoint. You want to find somewhere that integrates well with your North American team. For anyone who's listening who's interested in starting to do business in Slovakia, maybe they can contact you directly, but what resources are there to just understand the landscape and how to do business and who to work with and who's available? It sounds like maybe they want to attend your conference, but where else do they look?
Well, the question is like, where should they look? I mean, like the entire Central Europe is, I think, very underdeveloped. A part of Poland, maybe Czech Republic, they are the most successful. Ukraine to an extent, but it's a more complicated landscape. But Hungary, for example, Slovakia, Croatia, Serbia, there's, I think, a lot of opportunities there as well. So Romania, I mean, there are some bigger companies in Romania, for example, but the indie scene is very underdeveloped as well. So we see there is a potential for building up this indie scene with all we need is a little bit of something what we done here. and just replicate this and bring this to some other underdeveloped regions as well. We are still like very underdeveloped as well, so there is a lot of growth potential here, but the entire Central Europe is I think very good landscape for many external Western companies.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, if I'm an American and I don't know much about Central Europe, how would I go about figuring out, do I want to start in Slovakia? Do I want to start in Hungary? Like, how do I assess what region to start doing business in? Is there a conference I should go to? Are there bigger players that will help me understand the landscape? Because as when you operate a business, sometimes you need to do something that you have no idea about. I just saw a LinkedIn post from a guy in Finland who's like, hey, I'm trying to get insurance for my 2 American employees and I have no idea where to start, right? So how do you even understand the landscape?
Well, what you should definitely do is check the local events, get there, and see yourself. That's definitely the first recommendation. Second, I would go for Game Developer Associations. There is Czech Developer Association, Slovakian Game Developer Association, Serbian Developer Association. Who knows their landscapes? Usually they can connect you very well, depending on what you might be looking for. So I think that's the best. And of course, I go to the regular events and just look for people from the territory, maybe like bigger companies, and try to discuss with them, ask them for the advice and how they can help you. I don't know. That would be my best.
Yeah, that's a good idea on the Game Developer Association, especially because sometimes it's overwhelming and you just have to find a starting point. But I feel like a lot of business, the way it happens is that you're at a conference and you meet somebody, right? Like I sit by you at the conference and then I start to learn about Slovakia and then I get interested and then I go into this.
Yeah, for example, in Slovakia, we collect data for many years now. So when we created a compiled report on all the landscape in Slovakia, like sgda.sk, and then you can check out the annual report, and there you will find all the companies, all the performance, like how it's growing, how many people are involved. Like I think we do it quite nicely and structure the entire data in a very transparent way.
Yeah, I've seen that from some other countries as well. Other countries have it organized so much better than us Americans. So
it's much smaller, much easier to organize it in a smaller scale.
It is very different, that's for sure. So I'm always curious to hear stories. And do you have a story about just a really hard business decision or game decision that you've had to make? I mean, running 2 companies for 20 plus years is amazing. It's still in business. It's doing well. You've started this other company, but like you said, in a game, it's just one wrong decision. But in business, you're making all these decisions all the time. So do you have a story about a really hard decision you had to make on what direction to go or what type of business to start, what game to make, what partner to work with, and how do you think about approaching these hard problems?
I usually just do the decision and just throw it behind. You cannot just then iterate it. So it's just make the decision and go forward. Yeah,
you're a fast decision maker.
Sometimes too fast, to be honest. But yeah, you don't want to waste too much time. But at the same time, you need to do. The problem is when you think too much, you might get overthinking it. So that's you can find the logic behind like any angle if you think too much about it. And sometimes it's very competitive logics which delivers you different results. And sometimes this first decision might be the best, like instinctive kind of decision. I'm not saying it's always. Sometimes I failed, but to be honest, often our decisions were driven primarily by the needs and by the existential needs, and we have to pay the bills, we have to pay the salary. So it was several times that we have been in a situation like literally we were either closing or signing, and eventually like we managed to sign, but it was like this or that, like literally this month. So, and this kind of situation was maybe 3-4 times over the 20 years. It's existence, the life, which basically drives your decision at certain moments. So not my preference, maybe, or it's not planned decisions. It's just you want to pay the bills and move forward and live to fight another day. And
that is the decision. What is that? That's a bad or worse decision. Like you're in a bad situation. Which way are you gonna go? But yeah, I think being faced with that kind of challenge does make it really clear. And every business has its ups and downs. One of my mentors told me my business just took off when I started, and then it plateaued a bit. And And it's like, what is going on? And he's a sweet guy, and he's like, Lizzie, business is not a straight line. I'm like, okay, you're right. There's so many ups and downs, but it's hard when you're on the up to have the plateau or have the down. So that's
Yeah, well, we are, everybody is trying to get in the business, like on the upper side. I mean, there are some unicorn cases which kind of do the immediate success and everybody hears about it,
sure. Yes,
But even there, I think there is a lot of failures behind it. It's just people don't see it. And true unicorns, I think there are very few.
Would you be open to sharing? Are there any failures? There are things that went terribly wrong that you would really learn from? I mean, the point of my podcast and why I started it is you have so much experience, and what are the hacks you can share? What are the stories you can share that someone listening can take away and say, hey, I learned to do this thing, or I learned about this thing I should never do, or there's an experience somebody else had and how they got through it?
Yeah, to be honest, I think I am heavily affected by my past. Like that's my box, which I'm still living in. I'm trying to get out of it and look from the outside, but it's difficult. And I think to an extent, my dependency on the publishers is part of this box. And that we are always thinking in context of the publishing, which also led me to maybe to doing publishing myself and maybe helping others to avoid the pitfalls which I have been through. But for the devs, I would say that it's sometimes it really requires the courage to go with your own product and do a step-by-step build up. At the same time, the right partner can help you a lot. That was always my kind of wish that we have the partner who can amplify our potential. But eventually we had to become our own partner and try to amplify ourselves. But still, if you find the right partner, I think they can help you a lot. And my biggest kind of learning is that it's all about the people we are working with, and this great community, game development community, is like fucking amazing. And I really so much enjoy like being here and part of it. It's just like crazy. I really enjoy going to the events and speaking with the people because I learn so much and find so many great talents and people and learning so much stories. I think that's the biggest value which every developers who like really is not like just about the product, but if you are thinking more about making sustainable business, maybe in the long term, should be focusing on building your network, finding the right partners who can, maybe all you need is just one guy who can introduce it, then another, and then it could lead to another. So it's all about this network, and that's the biggest value. It will take you wherever you want if you give life a chance.
I agree. Network is everything. It might be a gal, it might be a lady who introduces you, just to clarify.
Yes,
Always. You never know. And you said evaluating a partner is the most important thing, and sometimes you can't find the right partner. How do you know when the partner is right for you? I mean, a lot of it's probably are the terms agreeable, which right now the answer is probably no, but it comes down to the people, like you said. So what signs do you look for? What kind of questions would you ask to make sure that the partnership aligns?
To be honest, it's not that much about the business. It's more about the philosophy and the mindset. So this is something which you may not that much be looking for, like specific business questions. It's just like trying to get a contextual point of view from your potential partners and trying to learn as much about their characters rather than direct business decisions, because business is still just a business and it can be different. But if the character is right, the people are reliable, and you find that there is a chemistry and understanding, mutual philosophy and interests, then you can create the business case. It doesn't have to be your original business case. You can find the business case together. And even if it fails for 1, 2 times, maybe third time, it will work out. But if there is an alignment on the philosophy and on the understanding, then these people may be around you for a while, and then you will be creating some new opportunities. And that's my way of thinking. So I'm not necessarily pushing my vision. I'm trying to create something from all the connections which I have and all the great people, and trying to bring them together so that there are some cross check on the opportunities, and then they can get together. And maybe I don't even need to be part of it. It's just if they can create the opportunity together, maybe that will lead to another opportunity which I can be part of in the future. So, well, just making things happen.
Yeah. I think that's not a so talked about reason why there are so many disasters right now. People were just looking for the partner that gave them the best terms or the best deal, or anybody that would give them money, and all of a sudden you're in this marriage with the wrong person. So
Yes,
you're probably
exactly.
going to get divorced and it doesn't work out so well. A lot of
Yes,
people are like, I need to get money. Okay, this person is interested. They're going to give me money, but not so much the consideration. Do we share values? Do we have the same mission?
exactly.
Are we going to be able to work together? Yeah, there's a lot of that right now.
Yeah, but sometimes it takes quite a lot, so you still have to pay the
Yeah,
bills. So that's the downside of this
totally.
kind of. It's
Yeah,
still fighting the
right. You have
job.
to make the business decision to continue
Yeah.
your company. But yeah, sometimes then I think you end up with the wrong person. But that's all part of the learning experience, like you said.
Yes, entrepreneurship, right?
Entrepreneurship. Yes, the next venture is going to be a good one. I have one last question. You have worked for yourself for a long time and had many ups and downs. And if you were to give someone who wants to start a publisher or a game development studio anywhere in the world, some advice about mindset or what they should think about really as they're starting. I think a lot of people are like, okay, I'm going to start, but you don't always think about all the key things you need to put in place at the beginning. What piece of advice would you give to them?
To be honest, like it depends. If you are, there are two ways to approach it. It's like business goal first, and then like team first. And you either take the people which you have available, like around yourself, and who are maybe willing to share their life with you, and then create something which fits them. Or like you take the business idea and then try to bring the people which are compatible with your business plan. So I think both ways can work well, but the problem with the business first is it's more forcible, like you're trying to force some things, your vision through, which is plausible, but it can be more difficult because you need to bring the right people. And finding the right people is, I think, the biggest challenge in the industry, like and in life as well, like finding the right partner, right? And whatever. It might be difficult, not impossible. It just could eventually cost you more money, but it will lead you to your goal, which you already set up at the beginning. On the other side, like starting people first, it may lead you to some uncharted territories where you may not have been expecting to end, but it could be still a nice journey and potentially profitable one if it all works out. Now the question is if the journey or the goal is first. So that's up to, I think, everybody to decide.
I've never heard anybody explain it like that. So that's very
Yeah, me neither. I just came out with
yeah,
it.
no, finding the right people is always the hardest part.
Yeah, it's the
That is
right
why I have a
question, you
job.
know?
It's my profession. Yeah,
That's because you can ask the right questions. That's
it is about asking the right questions, but it's also about seeing that connection and reading between the lines, right? You say you want this, but I know that you need this type of person, and then figuring out, okay, what point are you at? Are you at the point where you just need to ship and you need someone with this specific experience to come plug in and do that thing and fix whatever it is that's wrong with your game? Or are you at the beginning and you need someone with this type of personality? So it's like a puzzle, and then you find that
yeah,
and you have to understand the other person and the company. I love it. It's so
exactly.
much fun. I feel like I stumbled into recruiting, but it's perfect for me. It's just what I should do. I love it. We've been talking to Peter Notch, CEO at Grindstone and Games Farm, organizing conferences on IGDA, doing all the things. Peter, where can people go to contact you, learn more about you, or attend your conference?
They can go to gamesfarm.com or like grindstone.sk and or just like go to LinkedIn and find Peter Knight, Grindstone, whatever, and then just ping me anywhere. There are so many channels now, right? So I can't even follow them enough. So yeah, it would be lovely to hear anybody. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and speak with you. Very great questions. I always enjoy speaking with the when the right questions are asked, and it basically initiates my brain a little bit in a different way than just like about daily operations, dealing with the stuff on a daily basis. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. To catch all the latest from Here's Waldo, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes. We'll see you next time.